All right, should we get started?
Yes, sure.
All right, well, thanks everyone for coming for our session on really about shared information systems. My name is Brendan O'Neill. I'm the commercial director at Data Driven, the engineers of Activity Info. And
I am Melisa Vieropoulou. I am Senior Monitoring and Evaluation Implementation Specialist at Activity Info. So this means that I support customers on building those information management systems every day, practically.
all right, so we're going to start off just by kind of setting the context with the state of information management, and then I'm going to turn it over to Elisa to guide us through a couple practical examples and a framework for thinking about shared information systems.
Mhm.
All right. So the current landscape, I think it's pretty well covered that we're in a state of transition right now. We've always been having to do more with less, and that's even more true today. And we have a question really, and that question is around whether we, sorry, I didn't know those animations, whether we in the humanitarian development, social impact sector are going to retreat or adapt. And I think based on everyone here, being here at this conference, I think that we've all made the decision that we need to adapt. So it's not really going to be easy, though. I think there's a lot of programs that just don't exist anymore. Obviously, there's not funding, there's less staff. But from an information management perspective, there's a number of challenges that need to be addressed. One is data gaps. So the fact that whole information management systems in the sector are gone, the staffing for that is gone. Aside from the data not being there, there's also the institutional knowledge, the sectoral knowledge around that's gone. And then also this idea of fragmentation. So where data does exist, in reacting to this new world we're in, there's a risk of the data becoming more siloed, I think. The other issue is really around technical debt, and I've seen this in a number of the conversations I've had where organizations have invested in some really nice systems, but now there's no funding for those systems. So even maintaining them, security updates, that type of thing have become really challenging. So there's this idea that these systems are just really no longer there. Let's see, it's not advancing.
And what we need to do?
Yeah, I don't know.
Did you want me? No, I think it's, wait. Up. It's not advancing. Can we have your support? Did we press something that we shouldn't?
Can we advance on the screen or?
No, they have the control over there. I don't have control over the presentation.
I guess we can just stare at this slide for the next 45 minutes.
So for the record, it took me a while to find that picture because I think art. Yeah.
Okay, you can advance through to the other elements.
Is working.
Okay.
So I think that art and information management systems are connected indeed.
Okay.
Let me see.
There we go.
Yes, and it's
Okay. Yeah.
I have mine. Yours.
So with these challenges, and our need to adapt, there also presents us with some unique opportunities, I think. The opportunity to consolidate on standards that are really, it's mandatory for data to be interoperable between systems, automatically baked in. Also, I think we've heard a lot about localization already. We can really accelerate this. And when we're thinking about designing information systems, a bottom-up approach where it's a field-first design principle. The other thing is really focusing on these systems being able to measure the impacts, not just what we've done, but also who have we helped. So that's kind of the context, I think, at least as I conceptualize it, with where we are at with information management in the sector, and maybe the opportunities for us moving forward to harmonize and work together in a more shared approach.
Exactly. So let's see how we can work together. But before I start speaking, I want to ask you back, who of you you were involved in adopting a common information management system, either for a project within a consortium or in an organization across different countries, across different projects within a country. Any? Okay, let me see. I will choose because I don't have a lot of time, so I need to choose. I want you to tell me what was the biggest challenge that you faced?
People change.
Great. I need one more to make it more pluralistic. Who else was? Okay, great. What was the biggest challenge that you faced?
I think during the process, there was that resistance to the change. People were kind of slow in terms of adopting that particular system.
Thank you. So I don't have time to ask all of you. I apologize for that, but they told me that they have 50 minutes. So let's see what we can do there. I have still a technical issue here. Great. So I'm going to start, and I should have mentioned for the beginning. So for this presentation, I exploit my customers. So I used the Lutheran World Federation, and I want to thank them, CARE, for providing me information on what they did, DRC also for providing me also with additional information, and Islamic Relief. So I used 4 different examples that I will go through the presentation, and I want to thank them very much for their input. So let's go with the story first of Lutheran World Federation. It's an organization that operates in 26 countries, if I'm not mistaken, and they focus on different implementation areas, livelihoods, water, sanitation, and in order to give you a magnitude, they assisted cumulatively up to 2024 that they managed to find the reports, 16 million people. Okay, so what they did, first of all, they wanted to move from rigid data to dynamic insight. The driver there was the objective. They wanted to establish a single source of truth across their countries and across the departments. What was the situation before? They were using technology that was actually could not be adapted to the needs. So it became obsolete, no? So we live in projects that are living creatures, as I like to imagine them, but technology couldn't stand up, couldn't be adapted to those needs, changing needs. So the system became obsolete, become an obligation, people, they stopped using it so much. So everything got a bit slower at that point. What was the main driver? They said, and this came from a strong leadership, that, look, we cannot continue like that. We need to use data and use data responsibly. And for a reason, because they collect data from our beneficiaries and we have an obligation towards them. So the driver was a strong leadership, but also along the process, they take in consideration each country office, the needs that they had. That it was a bit complicated. We were going to say, well, how? What was the result? They adopted, I think it took them more or less a year, if I'm not mistaken, a common information management system across 20 countries. And this led to a shift in perception. A shift in perception that they said, look, it's not a merely obligation for me to report only to you, but I see the value as a country on that system. That is why I'm going to use it, because I see the value myself. What was the journey? It all starts with a decision. The decision at organizational level that I want to standardize at institutional level. I want to have reporting at global level and quality reporting. Governance is important, and some people in the conference, I hear them speaking about governance. So, or boundaries, or limits. I like the human limits. So HQ here, they established the adoption process and they oversaw the implementation. Whereas country programs, they executed and gradually they took control, because this is how it's sustainable in the long run. Data model. So they said, look, we have requirements, because all the HQ, they have requirements, but we need to acknowledge flexibility here. So they created a standard database with a minimum global requirements to have covered that part. but also they left flexible database that each country program could actually adjust for their own needs. And of course, here they were stepping in order to provide any guidance as this was needed. In terms of technology, so they used activity info as information management system. They acknowledged that they had the need for statistical analysis and advanced data cleaning. R here was their response to that question. And advanced data visualization, we all like Power BI. And of course, here they had an API integration with SharePoint because it's something that many organizations they are using. So you try to facilitate integration across with the systems that you already use internally. So I like, because I took the interviews. Aneta here, I like what she told me about activity info. So I will leave you like a couple of seconds to read it through. But it really resonated with me that technology, at the end of the day, can shift the perception. And we want that. We want people to see the value in something that they're using, not as an obligation. Let's see what was the framework. So taking a step back, let's put things into boxes in a way, in order to take them out of the boxes at some point. So let's start by establishing what is an information management system. So the core of information management system is information. It goes without saying. What do we need for information? We have on the one side the collection of data, that those data should be organized into databases, different data collection data sets. We need to transform the data into information analysis there. Comes in order to use that information in order to make decisions. So decision is the ultimate objective. Anything in between that interrupts this path means that the data are useless. This system needs to be maintained in the long run. So we need something that would last at the end of the day. How this can last? We need to consider people. And I think that I am in the right conference to make that comment. So we need to consider people, processes, and last tools. Tools will not be nothing if you don't have the people and the processes in place. And what is being shared in those shared information management systems? We have decentralized, like a case that different partner organizations, they work in a specific project. Each one of those, they use their own system. It has happened multiple times. Centralized. In a consortium, I use a common information management system and of course hybrid in between. Now, there's no one solution that can fit each problem, and we should be flexible. We should have our ears open. From moving from decentralized to centralized, I need to have in my mind that the centralized system needs more time on the setup. But at the end of the day, in the long run, needs less maintenance. The decentralized system is faster in the setup, but I need higher maintenance because here I need to keep in my mind the interoperability, integrations that I need. And of course, the level of harmonization increases the more that I need to centralize a specific system. Now, I tend to think that many things, many useful results, they come from comparisons. So I mentioned Lutheran World Federation, but I think it's a time to make a comparison between interagency approach, CAS consortiums, organization approach. What is common and what is different in their case? We have, and I want to thank again, the CAS consortium of EMN, coordinated the CAS programming. DRC EMN there had the lead, and it was established in 2022, in 2020. EMN coordinated the Bradley program. Again, in EMN consortium, CARE took the lead in that consortium. Their objective, it was interagency coordinator using a common system, the primary objective. Then I have also Islamic Relief Worldwide. For context, they operate in over 40 countries across the globe. And again, similar to Lutheran World Federation, they want to establish a single source of truth that aligns with Project Life Circle and core humanitarian standards. Now, what are the common challenges in those two cases. First, change management that you mentioned also, and I think that we all know. Their field teams were attached to the previous system. Any system, it can be even a combination of systems, but I'm attached to that system. I know it's familiar, I like it. Anything new is a burden because I have a million things to do in programming. Rollout. In both cases, we rust things in a way, no? So we take the decision and we want to implement that decision. So of course, this implementation happened in both cases without the system being always 100% finalized. You took their feedback as you go. However, here you need to keep in your mind that the implementation needs to be flexible because each team, each country has their own priorities. Capacity building. We have various people coming from different cultures, with different origins, different capacity. We need to account for that. And we need to be conscious. Not all people, they learn the same way. Resources. Who does what at the end of the day? So here they need to determine who would do the heavy lifting, and this heavy lifting had to do with data migration multiple times. Who migrates the system? Who does what in that context? Scale. They needed to maintain a centralized control, basically. But at the same time, they needed to allow for flexibility. Either this comes in different countries, different flexibility, or because I work in a country and in Yemen, I have different data protection rules in the north and the south. It's still flexibility. So what is basically, okay, what they told me, I tried to put it into boxes. And we came up with 4 different boxes, practically. So one thing, a shared goal. Why do we need a shared information management system? Second component, how are we going to work together? Who is going to do what at the end of the day? And how I'm going to put this into bullet points, into boxes again. So governance. Data model, how I'm going to organize my data. And technology, which is the technology that actually implements the data model and the governance that I have in my mind. So at the end of the day, technology comes last. I need to have decided on the rest of the points. How I am time-wise? Great. Okay. Shared goal. Key questions that I need to answer. Who are the stakeholders involved? First, what decisions do we need to make together? What I need to decide? Who decides? What information I need to make those decisions? Do I have all the information right here and now to decide what I need to do? Which is my ultimate goal? And who I need to be consulted in that project? I don't design on my own. I need to consult different teams. Who are those teams? Who are those people? Those skills. Objectives when it comes to the share goal. 1, I want to increase efficiency. I want to have better coordination, consortium case, higher impact, organizational case. I want to reduce cost. I don't want to spend time and effort and resources on cleaning the Excel file or transforming data all the time. And I want lower risk. I don't want to exchange emails with beneficiary referrals at the end of the day. I want also to improve data use. I want my people to use the data. Otherwise, we torture beneficiaries for nothing, practically. I want to report on collective results. So what is the difference between the interagency level, organizational level? As I mentioned, interagency level, ultimate objective, coordination, unified donor reporting. Organizational level, institutional standardization, and global impact reporting. Main difference, it's interagency approach. I give priority to coordination. Harmonization, standardization plays a role, but comes after coordination. In organization, I give priority to standardization. Both cases, they need to establish a single source of truth. That's the common. Risks that I need to mitigate. Protection of data subjects. So the more I give access to different stakeholders on a shared information management system, the higher is the risk that I need to mitigate. I have responsibility because there I store beneficiary data. I have increased efforts during implementation, and because I need coordination, increase coordination, I need to gain people trust. I guess coordination here comes with trust together. Capacity. I need to account for capacity building. I need to account to have resources in place, people in place, time in place, skills in place. And there's a decreased autonomy. Like, in order to use a common information management system, I need to put my ego a bit down and go with the fact that I will not do however I please if I am an organization. I need to sacrifice something in order to collaborate. How we can manage that resistance? So resistance, in that case, we have to address primarily human factors. Fear of unknown, lack of resources, a previous bad experience because my previous manager didn't communicate completely the timeline. I don't have the time because changes, because I'm a regional staff, I have 10 countries instead of 15, I don't have the time to do the whole change. I need, though, to manage that resistance. I have always. The humanity had always issues. So what I need to do there, I need to put my people in the center. I need to hear them, what are their worries, but I need, at the end of the day, to have a specific person that takes the lead, and that's the person that will take the lead throughout the implementation. I need to communicate properly timelines along the way. I need to be accountable for what I do, and I need to share back results. At the end of the day, I need also to put capacity building in the core, no? I need to capacitate my people. So my people, they need to know. I need to convince them and demonstrate value. Change management, what each case they did. So the starting point between both cases, either consortium or organization, was the same. They need to demonstrate value and buy-in and engagement. This is what their first step. They start implementing meetings, introducing their ideas, etc. They differ a bit, the trajectory. So in the interagency, they need also to buy legal compliance first, because we are talking about different organizations that they're going to share the data. Like when you have care and save the children sharing data, the legal departments, they're going to enter in between. So first, you need to guarantee that this part is quite completely clear, and then gather system requirements. Whereas organizational level, they're going to move directly in the system requirements. But then they have also difference with the interagency. They will pilot most of the times. So they have the time to pilot. The interagency doesn't have the time to pilot. They will go directly because they need to implement, because CAS consortium, CAS project will last for 1, 2, 3 years. Something happened there. Let me go to governance. Huh? Okay, I trust you. I don't have another alternative. How we will work as a team. I still remember what I have to do. Okay. So how we work with a team. Here we have some key questions that we need to answer. Which is responsible for each part of the process. So imagine that you have a process. You have two parts of that process. You have the process of designing the information management system. Imagine it as a mini or huge project, depending on the information management system. And then you have how we're going to work together inside the system. So the one is project management. The first one is who has access on that system. So which entity is responsible, which entities, again, we need to be consulted, the timeline, of course, and what are the risks here that we need to mitigate. We have the following roles. I had the box here, I remember that. So when I set up the design of the information management system, I have Data Governance Council, someone that gives strategic direction. Is a very important person. We don't need him to do anything else than giving strategic direction. Data steward, setting policies about data governance, how I'm working with my partners, data quality of the information management system. Data owner, the ones that they make decisions about the data are those also that they design the system most of the times. Data custodians, frequently the IT here, that they handle technical aspects of data management. I think that I lost something. Okay. Next one. We have, great, thank you. We have data, then during implementation. So I have designed the system. It's time to give access to internal teams or partners, etc. Here we have the data producers, which are frequently responsible for data collection, but we need to account also for data consumers, people using the data for decision making. So on one side is the data collectors. On the other side, I have actually the people that they use the data, such as the program managers. They need to consume the data. Tac, tac. Okay. So, what are the differences? What is case what they did? During the preparation is here, you cannot see it. So during the preparation is in interagency level, we had a single lead agency that took the lead, no? You need someone to take that lead. So in that case, great, I'm here again. In that case, it was care in one side, DRC on the other case. Here you need also a coordination unit. So you need a coordination unit that will be responsible for the development and maintenance of the system. And a steering committee to act as an advocate. You need the senior leadership to act as an advocate. They will not do anything, just speak, but they need to convince. Organizational level, here you have the leadership. Here is a bit easier because the leadership will take the leading role. The important thing, though, is to involve IT and monitoring and evaluation. So you need both departments to work for you in some way. Now, during implementation, they have kind of different roles within the system. So the interagency level, we had senior management that they had access in the system, of course, data management teams and per partner teams. The organizational level, we have frequently global teams, country admins, and standard users. Now, the interesting with organizational level is that they start with the countries as standard users, and gradually they start incorporating partners across its countries. Data sharing agreements required for multiple legal entities. Data protection is not equally important, but data protection is more complex in the interagency from the legal standpoint of view. So the result is that here we have a segregated control, the coordination unit controls, partners, they have access and they're restricted to their own data. In the other side, we have internal control, the headquarters controls there, countries execute and gradually control. Basic principles that we need to consider. We need to collect only the information that we need and only anything that we need. And of course, we need to give users access to only what they will need. Risks associated. So the higher the risk, the higher the cost that we need to mitigate. Common risks, data leaks, frauds, and errors. So we need primarily to identify the risk prior to any implementation. We need to evaluate those risks. We need to have the processes in place for the risk. Imagine fraud. If something happened with the beneficiary data, primarily, what is the first question that I do? Whom I report to whom I'm going to tell, and then anything else. So here, the important thing is that, especially in a common system, I have processes in place, instructions for my people in order to know what they will do, actually. The enforcement mechanism is always those data sharing agreements between members of a consortium, example, the CCY in Yemen, data processing agreements with external partners. So here you have many cases. You have the cases that I work in a consortium or with an organization. I need to refer a person to external organization. Can I say Identify core data entities. Example given. We have frequently the scenario, a master data set, households, beneficiaries, projects, transactional data. I collect information around these master data sets. For the households, I connect the cash disbursements. For the projects, I have the monthly progress. Standard data sets, or the so-called reference data sets, locations, partners, indicators, standard lists that I know in advance. So we need to think through the data that we collect. And of course, there the importance is that we need to align on the standards, on the type of information, on the type of data, to put it more correctly, that I collect for each data entity. Understanding also the relationships. So I have different data sets and I have specific data entities. How are those that they are associated? A household will have many individual members. Each individual member will receive multiple services. So I need to have in my mind what are those relations, how we expect those records to be connected. Because at the end of the day, this also determines how I'm going to implement the flows, how I'm going to restructure if I need to restructure for data analysis. The data, how those data will flow. And here it comes the project implementation flow. Basically, if you think it, is how the project implements, how the country manager reports. I need to know that information. Example given, frequently needs assessment. Second point, registration of the beneficiary. The other more frequently is the vulnerability assessment before delivery, delivery of service, and then at the end of the day, the data use. First of all, we need to align on those steps, because if multiple partners, multiple countries, they're going to use the same platform, they need to perform the same steps or equally in similar steps in a way. And of course, here we need to be sure what kind of transformations I need to do in its case. Duplication, anonymization, who needs access to what? What are the difference between the interagency and the organization? Interagency. They created a single database. It contained households or beneficiaries as the main data entity. They needed to harmonize the registration process. Here, the interesting part with Yemen, it was they had different standards between North and South, not across partners. Still, they managed to coordinate and make the forms, maintaining them differences because they had to. Standardized vulnerability assessment framework and standardized beneficiary household level data collection. On the other side of the organization, both cases, they had the standard database that enforced minimum global requirements, flexible database, because we need to account here that each project they have their own data collection needs. The key is that the moment that I give ownership to a country, to a team, they have, that is tailored to their context, translation in their own languages, they can modify the information that they need to collect. They have also incentive to use a system. Otherwise, we will not do, let's face it. All of us have been in the same situation. In terms of data architecture, what I have found most commonly used in the interagency approach, household is the most common unit, that we have assessment or multiple assessments associated with household sitting in different data collection forms. Surveys, those post-distribution monitoring surveys, different data collection forms. Services, multiple, sitting on different data collection forms. The referral, the same. And here with referrals, remember that you have also external actors. So there are nice examples that people, they gave access to those referrals in order to minimize that back and forth with emails in external actors. And when I close the case. And here they standardize the administrative areas and the partners that they needed to standardize because are common standard lists. Organizational level. Here, minimum requirements, they made a template practically that each country they had access in order to copy and use for their own sake. And the reference data, which usually the organizations, they keep on a separate database that includes indicator lists, all the geographic locations, the partners data, the organization, donor projects. So this tends to be a different database. Technology use. The enabling layer. How I am time-wise? Great. So the enabling layer. What platforms and tool we use? It's the last one that we ask ourselves. First, we need to determine the need, then the tool. Should we build or buy? Another frequent question. Many organizations, they tend to build their own tool. Others, they tend to buy. Based on my experience, it's hard to maintain those systems. You're always going to need a team of tech-savvy developers that they do this job for us. How do we get data to move efficiently through the system and integrating with other systems? How do we maximize data quality? How do we enforce our rules, data within a specific system? And how do we build resilience into our systems? Now, there is a difference between decentralized and centralized, as I mentioned. Decentralized integrations are more important, interoperability. I love this word, I cannot even say it. Data transformation is more important, and integrative analysis. More important in the sense that we need it more to be there, so that is why we pay more attention to it. Centralize, we need to pay attention to granular permissions and scalable relational data model. So integration. Here we need to have in our minds that we have a system and we will import and export million times. So we need to keep in our minds that when we choose a system that supports diverse formats. It supports also API. An API should be intuitive and well documented. And also when it comes to import, it should also support the validation. We need to validate frequently. The data cleaning is what I hate the most, and most people in this room, I believe that they hate and they have done. So we need somehow to reduce it down. Validation is there the answer to that. Data transformation. When I have multiple systems in place, I need to transform data. So I need also a system that supports different data types and supports different operations. Also duplication resolution here. So imagine, let's take as an example the CCY in Yemen. In the same country, you have multiple organizations operating. The possibility of duplication is high. Simply as that. I have the incentive as a beneficiary to go to all of you to give me money. So I need duplication in place. So whatever system I consolidate afterwards, I need to have in mind that that system has facilitated the deduplication check. And of course, merging capabilities, because I'm going to find duplicates in there. What I'm going to do with those duplicates when I have corrected vulnerability assessment, registration data, and survey? Do I merge? Do I keep one of the two? Also, those are questions that I need to answer before starting implementing. Integrative analysis. The more decentralized the system, the more I need to transform. So the data, they need to be on the same format, the same field, the same column name to the detail. So here I need a system that supports this transformation and the combination of multiple data sets. Centralized system, what do I need? I need granular permissions. I need to be able to give separate access on the same data sets across different partners, across different regions within a specific country. Sometimes I need also to separate those permissions, no? A partner may be able to add and edit record, and the other partner would be able also to delete some record. It can happen, or depending on the role within my organization. I need also to be able to reduce in terms of data sources. Data collectors, they need to collect the PDM, that's all they need access to. The case workers, they will need to the registration vulnerability assessment, but maybe not to the PDM, depending. Scalable relational data model. I need to be able, and this is the most important part, irrespectively of the system that I use. If I don't do the data modeling before, most probably the system will end up confusing for everyone using it and will not be documented. So the next person that will come will not know what is included in that system. So the most important for me is documentation. At the end of the day, I need the ability to map relationships between those entities in a visual way. We all use Miro, Visio, whatever Microsoft has, use it. Flexibility to adapt to local context. I need to be able to choose a tool that will have translation, which is the first one, but people, they need to use their system in their language. It comes naturally. and it needs to scale up in order to handle large volumes of data, hundreds, thousands of records. What they do between the interagency and the organizational level, they use the activity info for data collection, descriptive analysis, both cases. Advanced data visualization analysis are in Power BI, and at the organizational level, it was also API integration with SharePoint. So basically, an example given, Power BI, it's frequently used, it's a very nice tool for data visualization, has everything. Example for R, that it resonated with me. CCY, they migrated from a previous system to Activity Info. They didn't want to interrupt their partners. They couldn't interrupt. So what they did, they built R scripts in order to facilitate that migration. So they did themselves the transformation, the migration to the new system until the moment that their partners could do it and use the system because they didn't want to have any gap, which I found very smart and a nice convincing way. That is why they end up with a common system after a couple of months. Common determinants of success, the direction. So you need a goal. And the goal cannot be, I need a system for reporting, because this will be a requirement and an obligation. Who wants to do obligations in their work? Governance. We need to have the implementation field-led, but governance should be also controlling the HQ or a lead agency. Someone will need to control it. Someone will need to oversee it. Field first. We need to invest heavily in workshops with field staff to convince them to ensure that the systems solve their own problems, not the obligations of an HQ or a coordination unit. Otherwise, they will use it for a couple of months and then what? Obsolete. Lost money. Ciao. Capacity. Mix of webinars, standard operating procedures, regional orientation workshops, hands-on support. You need to be there to have a team, community of practice in other organizations, but you need to have a plan when it comes to capacity. It cannot be random in a way. Key takeaways, but it resonated me after those interviews. So for me, the single most critical factor was the reciprocal value. So when people, they realize that they can get a value out of the system, the case worker because they can monitor what they have done, the program manager because they have access to the report, they start using the system. This is the single most important value that convinces people to use a system. Organizational adoption focuses on internal cultural shift. It's a culture that changes. Interagency adoption focuses on trust and neutrality. I need to have higher level of trust to trust another organization, if you think it's so, compared to internal trust. We need always a lead agency. You need a person that would lead, an organization that would lead, and we need to trust also that organization. So in that case, the DRC actually was viewed as a broker of data. Whereas in an organization, the lead is simply the authority. The interagency approach is significantly more complex regarding data protection. In an organization, we have our internal policies that actually they cover those aspects. Having said that, I think that I'm done. Thank you. And now it's time for questions.
Yeah. Please hand you the mic.
Thank you so much. This was really insightful. I want to take the liberty to slightly shift the conversation away from, yes, if you're building a new system, these are very, very important. And you get that right, you get the system right, and hence the service delivery follows. But these principles also apply for existing systems where data exists, but not in a manner where it's standardized, so it can be used by others. Interoperability cannot happen because you either build point-to-point integrations or you forget that systems need to talk to each other. So in that world, do you have any advice for governments that are, they have existing systems, there's a lot of data available, but there's no single source of truth. There are duplicates everywhere. So it's not easy to just say that the database with the highest number of records or the most accurate quality is the one that will become the source of truth, and then we augment that. It's a more complicated decision, right? So what is the advice in such situations on picking that source of truth to start with, and of course, it will not be 100% perfect. How do you keep building that up? Question one. Question two is, I think in these systems where you have definitive owners, they have to maintain the data for quality, accuracy, recency, all of that. What has been the incentive that really works beyond, say, the policy mandates that this line ministry is the owner of so and so data point?
Okay.
Thank you.
So let me respond that. So in reality is that we found ourselves in situations that we use multiple systems practically. So in that specific example, the customers, they moved for one previous system or even multiple previous systems. I think this was CCY to one common system. But indeed, you can make the case that, look, I cannot move to a single system. I will have two data collection systems no matter what. In that case, when I have those kind of situations, my advice is that it's fine if you want to keep, because we are a huge organization and the needs, we can say that one system cannot not justify all your data collection needs or your data analysis needs. But find a way at the end of the day to say that, look, I will choose that one system in order to get the information. And now in that case, I will need to automate somehow the connection between the other system. If I have, let's say, two data, I need to automate somehow. I have those cases sometimes. At the end of the year, what naturally happens is that after some years, because it takes years, the organizations, they take the decision to stay with one system gradually. But until they reach that point, they find a way to automate via, that is why many of those, they would use the scripts. So the script is your common answer to automate there, and the APIs. A combination of scripts and the API in order not to interrupt, and because exactly they want to satisfy all the needs. Did I answer the question? Yes and no. Wait, I don't like.
Well,
when
we can maybe discuss it after in the hallway. But
You
maybe,
can address me afterwards because I used to be the good student in the school. I don't like when I don't answer.
maybe one more. Thanks for your question.
Yeah, thank you. This is Bertrand from IMAP. I have a question. Thanks for the presentation, by the way, really well presented. My question is about legacy data before the setup, because usually when you're setting up these systems, there is already existing data. How do you, in your experience, how do you deal with that?
So there is a different spectrum of situations, no? Sometimes you still use that legacy data. So you need to transfer them in the new system. This requires time because it requires a data migration. The most common sense solution is to say, look, there is a break point for that legacy data. So I have a part of data that I know that I will not use realistically from now on. I need to keep them in the system to have them as a backup, but it's not being used by my teams. So I think that the situation in the middle. So there you have those cases that they say, look, I'm going to keep them, but I'm not interested in transforming them, data, clean them in the new data model, but I will keep them in the system. I will create something to store them there without doing the data, because the data cleaning is the time consuming. Nothing else than that. The import, it will take 5 minutes if this is ready. And then the data that I need, because in order to devote time for all those transformations of legacy data, I need to get value of the data. So the more value I get, the more time I will devote. This is how it goes. And they choose that, look, I'm going to transfer the past 3 years of data, the past 2 years, the past year even of data, because this is the data that my users need. This is the data that should be reflected in the new data model, because practically the data cleaning, they come a difference frequently of the data models that the customers they're using. Did I answer? I'm worried if I answer correctly the questions.
Thank you so much. My question goes to the interagency and consortium lead part that you presented. Your presentation was great, but for example, for us, we are building a system using the structure you have showed us. But I think the biggest challenge that I can say also maybe most of organizations face, especially in the development world, is the institutionalization plan, or maybe after the project or interagency agreement. Let's say it's a project, a 10-year project. You are developing a platform. So what happens after the project? Because you realize in development project, they are funded by the money, or the system is maintained by the project, right? So after the project, what happens to the system
To the data,
Yeah.
the system.
and
It's a
everything?
very good question. So basically, it's a question that has to do back with the data governance. No? Who owns the data? Who owns the system in a way? So when you work, it's indeed within an organization, that is a bit easier. The project stops. I will archive that project. I will close it down. I have ways to archive those databases. But at the end of the day, I will not have any associated costs with that project. But the ownership is my organization. I am the sole responsible for that. Within a consortium, usually what when I ask them what they did, they have put clauses, what it happens in the case that the project stops, in the case even that the funding stops because it was multi-year. Both Brightly was multi-year and this is why it's multi-year. So they had put clauses who owns that data. And they had a lot of back and forth with DRC. Actually, when I did the conversation, especially with the consortium, there was like, they needed to differentiate, even for DRC, that was the interesting thing, the ownership within DRC, whether it was Denmark, that the regional team in Denmark, or in Yemen. That it was very interesting. At the end of the day, they said, look, the project was implemented in Yemen, we collect data here. The owner of that system is DRC Yemen. So they clarified and they said, I am the sole owner. If something happens to the project, I will archive, I will have the sole responsibility. So this is what they do in their case. Indeed, in that case, that why the project stops, or even the project stops naturally, the funding ends and the project stops. The database is archived, and then, depending on your clauses that you have the deletion of data after a couple of years. Now, this depends on its legal agreement, on each country, because also countries, they differentiate for how many years you need to keep your data. The organizations that usually, they put the maximum across the countries, they tend to go with a stricter one to be covered across. So there it comes the deletion that you will say, I will keep that data without an associated cost, users that usually they have the cost for information for softwares, until 2020 something. And then this will be a deletion from the company, from the servers, practically, so data will never exist. Did I answer? I'm always worried if it's my natural instinct.
Time for another one? Yeah, in the back.
Just, I'm curious about the. Oh, okay. Yes, I'm curious about the maintaining aspect of a system. So I guess particularly in the context of capacity changing. So particularly around the second foundation of the pyramid, the governance period. So in situations where maybe, capacity has changed significantly within an organization and maybe you've lost certain of those key roles, do you have any kind of advice or kind of thoughts around how you then kind of reestablish that governance piece to ensure that that kind of it can continue and the system can be kind of maintained rather than fragmenting again?
I don't like my answer, but I do have. So in the examples, so what happened? Like, especially when the disruptions, they happened last year, no? And suddenly you had the database administrators that they had lost their jobs. Realistic, it happened. What had happened in those cases was the following. There was a responsibility. It's tangible, the job responsibility, no? This job responsibility was assumed by someone else within the organization, realistically. So that person who stays will assume the responsibilities of the person who left. Now, there you have two different cases. You have, and that is why the leadership plays a role, country level and HQ level. you have people that they are working on an environment that helps them assume their responsibility, meaning they have access to resources, someone is understandable towards the situation and supports by creating connections with other colleagues that they're doing the same things. You have a supporting network, no? You have resources, I don't know, you have both, you have communication also lines with the vendors, this is help to solve and support. And then you had people that they didn't receive equal, they didn't have access to that enabling environment. So they were left on their own, figured out on your own. Then it depends on the person. So it depends on how willing is the person and not to learn to assume the new responsibility practically, which this is risky, no? Because you leave it up to the person. For me, like based on my, from the software side, my best experience was always, and I could understand which organization has that enabling environment, which no. Because I could understand about the worry that I was hearing on the other line of the call practically. So there is a difference between the organization, the leadership that has capacity building resources, synergies to quickly mitigate those issues, and another organization that will say, well, you're on your own, figure it out.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think in an ideal world, you have a community of practice where some of that institutional knowledge is actively curated and information shared. And then you have a contingency plan. We know there's a lot of turnover in the sector. I've heard some organizations 40% of their staff every year. So if you know that, you can anticipate that and maybe plan for a transition. Someone's going to be assuming the responsibility at a later date. So I think we're getting the hook.
Exactly.
So we'd love to continue the discussion, maybe out in the hallway if you have any more questions. But thanks so much for
Thank you.
coming. Yeah.